It's the Solar One Sci-Fi podcast.
Hello and welcome to this week's Solar One Sci-Fi podcast. We're going to be talking about, it's a bit of a special actually, because we have Jay from Sci-Trek, and hello Jay, and we have my co-host Doclet, and I do recommend you check both their channels out because they're both awesome. I get all my information on stuff.
Your stuff's good too. Your stuff's good too.
Yes, I know, but I talk about the more obscure, forgotten about shit in the corner, what nobody really wants to talk about, you know. But I get all my sci-fi news from Jay's channel.
Me
so
too.
does my co-host.
Yep.
And I welcome to the podcast, Jay. It's great to have you on. And Michael, there you go.
Thank you very much. Yes, welcome to our show, our sci-fi movie channel. As we always try to
Don't steal my bit.
Well, listen, Jay, thank you for coming on.
TV.
Yes, it is your sci-fi movie channel.
I've got to get that put on a t-shirt before
actually, that'd be quite a good one. That could be a sort of like the next, like hashtag.
Right,
Put a hashtag or something.
The t-shirts out in the post. If you want to go to our website, you can buy one of our mugs for $49.99.
Yes, and I've got the Mandalorian one I did a while ago. There we are, there's mine. Look, it's not a competition. There we go. Sci-Trek, and there we are. Now listen, basically, I have been following Sci-Trek for quite a long time with Jay, and you know, you're a person who really tends to find out a lot of stuff, especially about one of our major favourite shows, which of course is the Stargate franchise. Very interesting stuff which has been going on there, which we'll talk about as well, maybe later on. But the reason why you're here is that we have just finished watching season 3 of Star Trek Picard, and we on our side have been very, very impressed with this. I know that you've liked it at your end as well. So firstly, I mean, we are going to talk about the actual season in general, but what did you think of the last episode first of all?
Shit.
You hated it as good.
What? Can you say that again?
It was shite.
It was so, there were no passion, it was shit.
It was shite.
After all that.
It's the best Star Trek we've seen in
decades. Yeah.
I mean, I love Strange New Worlds. I love Lower Decks. I love Prodigy, actually. I thought it was great. I know it's a kid show, but I fucking loved it. It's the best Star Trek we've seen in a very, very long time.
Now, some people are saying that one issue with the show was, and I think there's partly credibility in this, but a lot of people are saying that partly what its success was is because it had a lot of fan service. Do you think that is an integral part of why it was successful, or do you think it was a combination of that as well as just general good writing? Let's ask you, Jay, what do you think?
I don't understand why fan service is a bad thing.
I don't either, but some people are using that as a negative context, aren't they?
Sometimes you give the fans what they want. But it's one of those damned if you do and damned if you don't situations, isn't it? So you've got a choice. You can either do what the fans want and you get slammed for it, or don't and you get slammed for it.
That's right.
So, I mean, for me, I think I said it in one of my videos last week that, the Doctor Who thing just completely blew my mind for a second. Sorry, they just started dancing around behind you.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about the new Doctor Who coming on. Yeah. Oh no. Go on.
The point is that it doesn't matter if something. I thought it was predictable. You came on my channel, sir, and we talked about this the day before episode 9 dropped, and we basically told everybody what was going to happen.
We worked it out. Yeah, we were pretty.
Kind of ruined it a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
But it's because it was a bit predictable. But it was predictable, well written. So. Yes. You can't argue with that. It doesn't matter if you've got the best idea on the planet. If you write it badly, it's going to be rubbish. If you've got, though, good writing, a simple story that you want to tell, and you just do it well.
I mean, with episode 10, I mean, of course, it had some elements which I think, as you've already said, we predicted, like with the Borg and everything. You know, in the end, they're back. But I just thought the whole thing was just so... Well, it was very emotional. I actually got teary-eyed at least a couple of times in the last episode. And I'm a 50-year-old man. I mean, I don't mind telling you that. I was quite impacted by the whole episode. Because I watched Next Generation when it first came out. We used to have rental copies of Next Generation, the first episode from our like Blockbuster Video, and you used to get these 2-parters, and it was like the Encounter at Farpoint and everything like that. And I gelled with the series from day one, as I love the original series, and it was very surreal watching this last episode with these wonderful characters. It really felt like the end, and it just, yeah, I mean, it was predictable in some ways, but God, it had an emotional impact for me. It really did.
Is it the end?
No, well, this is it. I mean, hypothetically, but it's going to be the end of the entire cast.
The end of TNG.
And we might get something if Legacy comes along. But I just wanted to say just how much I've enjoyed it. I just think Terry Matalas. I wasn't that aware of him before this season. I know that he did some work in the early part of season 2 of Picard, the first episode, which was the best episode of Picard season 2, I think. And then somebody else took it over, and then he came back right at the end or something. But I just think that this is the guy for the franchise that really gets Star Trek, whatever that is to get Star Trek. And I think that's what I feel.
Service, or you're just talking about a fan making a show that he'd want to see. And yes. I think that's what we got. We got Terry Matalas making a show almost for himself. And that's why it comes through, because there's a joy to it, and it's cheesy in places. It is predictable. The Enterprise D coming through those doors was supposed to be a surprise, and it wasn't. But I still went and
who cares? Oh my God! Yeah,
jumped up and down on my chair a little bit and went, "I'm still doing it!" and I got excited. When Worf appeared for the first time, we knew it was happening. I still loved it.
Yeah,
because it was done well. And
it was.
It's what you want.
And it reminds me of why Discovery got it so badly wrong, because in the first episodes of that season, not only was it badly written, but there was no fan service at all. It was almost like a parallel, it was almost like a science fiction series, which wasn't a Star Trek. And I think that's why watching this, which don't forget, Discovery was started about, 4 or 5 years ago? It's been a while now. And so to reflect back on it, when I think it was something like that, and now they've suddenly got it back to what we kind of thought that it would be when a brand new Star Trek returned after Enterprise ended in 2005, and Discovery was like, all the fans were like, what the fuck, when the first episode dropped, and now we're doing it in the good way with the end of Picard, as to the fact that it ended in a very strong, very resonating way. Yes, a lot of people hate the Enterprise G. I think that you said you were disappointed with the G, one of yours.
Yeah, I don't hate it, I'm just disappointed.
There was a fan one. I think it was a Eclipse class rather. It was a fan creation a few years ago. It's a big thing. That was gorgeous. Now I would love to have seen that as a really powerful flagship.
It was a tank. It looked beefy. I mean,
it really did. It looked like a bodybuilder ship, didn't it?
Towards you on a dark street, you'd get nervous.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Don't go down the dark alley, dark wormhole, and encounter that ship, kind of thing. So let's go to Martin. Let me get some perspective from your side of things. What do you think of the last episode?
I was very touched. I was nearly in tears. It was like saying, but watching this has been one of them experiences, like where at some point you've been with a group of people in your life, and you've had like a year of a good time with them, then you have to move on.
That's right.
And it was like they'd all come back round again. And for a moment you got to relive that experience, and that's what I got out of this. I thought that it was predictable. I was wrong on the villain, I admit that. I thought I was hoping it was predictable.
You thought it was the Pars race, didn't you?
I didn't want it to be the Borg. Because we got the Borg in season 2 and they were all nice and cuddly and furry and nice. and then we got the Borg Queen. I did like, so what I'm assuming, I could be wrong, that Janeway did them all in with that virus.
Yes, she did. It was actually it was a sequel. Left. It was a sequel in many ways to Endgame, the last episode of Voyager, which was a very clever time.
Which was very clever. I was and the Borg Queen, but like her agenda. I don't know. I was expecting something a bit more. I did find it clever with the Borg DNA through the transporter. Yeah. But I found that the villain I love, is it Vladek?
Braddock. Vadic.
I thought she was marvelous. I would have liked to have seen her get it in episode 10. Because
Yeah,
I
she
thought
went in
was
episode 8.
Big enough.
I thought she would be right to the end. I was a bit surprised about that.
Yeah, I am a bit disappointed with that. But my favourite scene in all of this season was when Raffi was getting annoyed and she attacks Worf and the Klingon music kicks in. He's just deflecting her blows. I love that. So I kept rewinding it and watching that moment. I need to get a life. Honestly, I've loved this series. 10 out of 10 from me.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I also would say, I love the musical score. I mean, it has such echoes of the TOS movies. Dennis McCarthy as well. Some of his work was in Generations. They used in the last episode, actually, when they're zooming into the museum. It was the same music we had when the Enterprise D was crashed on Meridian 3, and I think Riker looks up through the broken window, and they had the same sort of music, and it just had such resonation for all those older episodes and the entire Next Generation series. I mean, I don't know. I'm just so surprised that it went to this as good as this. I never thought it would be. I thought it would be a generic good series or season rather after the first two, which were bad. I thought it would be an improvement, but I don't personally think it will get quite as good as it has done.
Do you know the scene I loved in this? When I went to see First Contact years ago at the cinema, the scene when you hear Alice Krieg's voice and that music, that sort of Borg theme music, it kicks in. When I heard her voice in this, her voice has got so much presence.
Yes.
And when I heard that how she talks, that she's got a very creepy voice, and she was marvelous. But to see her humble, like she wore traps in the corner, was quite interesting.
I mean, she wasn't obviously Alice Krieg. It was just her voice. It was a double for the actual physical representation of the Queen. I personally didn't know that the end of Voyager this much damage was done to the Borg.
No,
frankly,
Well,
I thought that.
Yeah, we thought it was only we knew the Unimatrix was only 1 of 5.
I thought it was just a local. Yeah, I thought the rest of it would be right, but obviously it's worse than the way that it was indicated in the last episode of Voyager. What I liked about this series as well is that so many different elements from the different series have all been kind of like taken on board, and when you look back now at the last episode of Voyager, you'll think about how bad the actual Unimatrix was damaged, or again the Urametic syndrome that Picard's got. That's now going to be always referenced when you watch the last episode of the Next Generation, because we know it was a Borg thing. You know, that's the same. Yeah, I just think it was a very, very solid series. But I mean, I suppose really we have to ask, what elements of the show did you both not like? What irritated you most? So let's ask you first, Jay.
Got a list. So
okay, go on.
It felt like, seriously, that in every episode they had to make some silly mistake.
Okay.
And that was not necessary. So in the very first episode we had the message for Jean-Luc from Beverly.
On the comm badge.
She told him, do not tell anyone. He immediately ran to Will Riker. Luckily, because Will Riker was the only one that could understand the bloody code she decided to use.
Right.
So it just seemed a silly an unnecessary mistake.
Okay.
The Titan irritated me. This is going to rant, so bear with you.
Okay. I'm strapped in. Go on.
So they kept calling it a new ship, and then they remembered, and then they would call it a refit. And then they would point out that the nacelles are 20 years old. And then you have to remember that actually it looks like a completely different ship to the original Titan, but it's the same ship. That's the same ship.
Apparently, yeah.
Because he had to purge a bunch of the
the jazz music, yeah. Yes.
Surely.
Right.
So that's the same. There's a theory gone around now that what they did was they took 2 ships and they basically like retrofitted between the 2. So it's actually like a cut and paste. Do you know what they tell you to do? To be careful when you're buying a new car, just in case they've took the front end.
Oh, it's a shunt. Yeah, what's it called? That welding.
There's a name for that, isn't there?
Yeah, I can't think of the word. Yeah.
Well, that's what they did for the Titan A.
Okay.
But it did seem like I remember at one point they talked about the changelings being evolving, and I'm like, no, that's not what evolution is. And she did it again. She tried to say that the Borg had evolved. I'm like, no, that's not what evolution is.
No.
I'm just like, so there's just like.
But they were a different form of changeling. They weren't the actual DS9 changelings.
Well, they were altered by by the, I suppose, Section 31, the scientists.
Yes, it was
They altered it.
They're modified. They're modified.
Them changelings had absolutely nothing to do with the actual Dominion, because Odo sent Worf a message about these renegade changelings. So the Dominion were totally like the Dominion we know. They were cut off. You know, these were like
they were prisoners of war, weren't they? They were prisoners of war.
Yeah, and they've been experimented on. You can't blame them. But there were meant to be 9 of them. There were more than 9.
There were more than them. Yeah, there were hundreds of them because they're all on the actual ships. But that didn't make sense. So
loads of them get killed, unless they spread when they met more chainlings. We don't know, do we? But yeah. So I say that there's little mistakes, but to be honest, they were so minor compared to the mistakes of season 1 and 2 of Picard. They were just me being a geek, getting irritable.
Yeah, but that's what we all do. We always look for the things that don't work. That's just a normal thing, Jay. Don't worry about that.
And the Titan A being turned into the Enterprise at the end, that actually did irritate me. That was just like, this is stupid. I don't know why they've done that.
Do you think they should have just kept it as the Titan? Because I liked it being the Titan A. I don't know why they did that, quite frankly.
They've done it because they're obsessed with having TV shows with the Enterprise in, and they want the Titan to carry on into the next series with Legacy.
They did actually say that it's going to be the Enterprise is a legacy. They said legacy, and so I actually only found out today that apparently they have stored the recreated Enterprise D bridge, which is a good sign that if they've stored it for something. I didn't know this.
There's a reason for it.
Oh, what's that?
Apparently, it's going back to Vegas.
Oh, you mean for like
an exhibition? So a few years.
Are they going to start up the Star Trek exhibition again in Vegas?
Yes. So apparently they're going to restart the Star Trek exhibition in Vegas, and that's what the Enterprise is. So the bridge will appear in Vegas.
Oh, I see. I thought they were saving it for potentially some spin-off or something.
Well, they've done that before, though, to be honest, and it doesn't mean they won't film on it.
True. You're true. They could physically film on it. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Might see it again, but apparently there's going to be a big Star Trek exhibition again in Vegas, and that's going to be but apparently you're going to be able to go on and actually go on to the bridge, and they'll do videos, and so there's going to be a whole experience thing that they're going to do. So,
right. So, any other criticisms you had of the show, Jay?
To be honest, no. Other than that, it's really the characters were perfect. I love the writing, even though the writing was a bit confused in places. Like I said, silly mistakes that were, I think. But you know when a show's so good, something will get you and like go, well, that gnaws me. I don't like that. But then you almost feel guilty for it. Yeah. So it's like, oh, I feel bad from nitpicking. But because it's such a brilliant show. But other than the way the end was, I'm not a massive fan that they brought Q in at the end. I don't think that's necessary. I think they could do better. It's not illogical. It's not a mistake. It makes sense, and it's an earlier version of Q. Fine. I just thought it takes away from second series, and also makes me think about the second series, which is bad. I don't want to think about the second series.
You're going to be reminded. Well, I think they did it because obviously John Delancey was in the very first episode of Encounter at Fast Point. I think that's partly why they did it as a sort of like a full circle. Yeah,
it was supposed to be, though, wasn't it? It was supposed to be. That was supposed to be the full circle. So it's like, I think Terry Matalas genuinely has gone, right, we so screwed up with seasons 1 and 2, we have to fix them. And
I think he did. No, I think he did. He saw the mistakes, and he actually tried to. Although some people are saying that the cue that we saw at the end of the last episode might have been a cue at an earlier point than the cue that we saw him in the last episodes of season 2. So technically,
he's not linear.
Yeah, so it could well be that he still died, but we didn't. It was a different point in his. You know,
it's just an earlier version of him. That's all.
Death to them isn't like death to us. They're omnipotent. It's even though there is rules with them, but you explain what his concept of death is. It's probably insane, you know. So I can see why they can pull it off with him at the end.
Yeah. But I have to ask you then, Martin.
It made sense. I didn't like it from a story point of view. I thought it took.
It was a bit cheap. I agree. I thought when I saw him, because everybody said, "What's the end? What's the end?" And I would expect, I don't know, but expecting like an advert for.
I thought it was going to be like.
Year, you know,
no, because Mandalorian, when it finished season 2, it had this announcement of the Book of Boba Fett. It was like at the end of the post credits. It was like, oh my gosh, and it's probably a bit naive to think that it was actually going on about some potential announcement of some other new Star Trek series or something. And of course it wasn't. But believe me,
There's a reason for that, though.
what's that?
Section 31 only got agreed basically 6 weeks ago, was the final agreement, and so they could not film something. Apparently, the plan was that they were going to film something for Section 31. It was just going to be Michelle Yeoh, like they did for the end of season 2 with Picard, just her walking out from the dark sort of thing. But the negotiations kept dragging on and on. So that's the only reason why we didn't get anything, and that's also why we got that weird announcement of.
It was very strange. It's sort of very random, wasn't it? But I know that they wanted to do a whole season of her, but I think because of Michelle Yeoh's a big thing, they've only got like a TV movie, which I've already said I actually think might work better than a full drawn out series. Because I'm a bit underwhelmed with the Section 31 idea, quite frankly. I'll certainly watch it, but I'm not exactly jumping with excitement.
For me, Section 31, this movie, whatever, I preferred Section 31 being like in the background in a season over a story arc. I think they work like that. What are they going to do with this? You know, what, we're going to get 007 in space and eject the state shuttles and Q.
Well, how are they going to explain it?
I don't know.
The last time, I'm not a big on Discovery, so you'll have to correct me because it's not my favourite show.
Yeah, no.
Well, she's like, well, from what I've seen of this, she's the Empress of the Terran Empire. Yeah. So why would she, if you ran an intergalactic empire, conquered everywhere, why would you want to become a secret agent?
Well,
she needs to get back.
Story arc, wasn't there? But I'm pretty sure the last time we saw her, didn't she go through the
Guardian of Forever? The Guardian of Forever.
Yes, she did. That was it. Yeah.
That was it. That's the last time we saw her. So you saw that yourself, Jay.
Yeah. So how are they going to explain that?
I don't know.
And where did she go? What time period? I mean, where did she go?
That's what I mean. But then they've got to try and say. I think it's probably more likely it's just going to become a Michelle Yeoh movie. I think they bit off more than they could chew there. But that's just my opinion. But I think they've got to try to go from doing a season of 10 hours, then they tried to negotiate to have a mini series of maybe 4 or 5 hours, and now they're just going to do a movie of 2 hours. That original storyline is out the window. Whatever they were originally planning is gone. They're going to have to now completely rewrite and create a 2-hour movie.
Yeah, but do you think that if they've not committed to a full season of the Section 31, that it might free up the money for them to put towards potentially a legacy series?
I think that's the plan now. I think it'll follow Strange New Worlds. I think Strange New Worlds will finish after season 3.
Yeah, I heard you say that the other day. So why do you think that? Is it because of the financial aspect, or why do you think it's only going to be 3 years?
Told it by a guy that works at Paramount.
All right, okay. Well,
I think from the guy that I'm speaking to, and I'm still ruining a video I'm dropping on Thursday, but
sorry. Actually, this is going on Thursday. This is going on Thursday anyway. So
I'll try and get it out before you then. But anyway, the guy I'm speaking to is basically saying that look, Paramount don't have enough money to have 5 shows running at once, and they're only going to have 2 live-action shows running at once now, and it's going to be Starfleet Academy and Strange New Worlds. But Strange New Worlds had it was really popular in the first sort of 6 or 7 episodes, and then all of their questionnaires and all the polling and stuff they did said it dropped off at the end. People didn't like.
I didn't know.
Really?
I was surprised. Really?
Well, the whole thing with Kirk apparently wasn't great, and to be honest, I felt the same thing. I thought the last couple of episodes of Strange New Worlds were not as good as the first 8. The last 2 episodes were a bit, but the people apparently what they've been told is by people that it feels like they're stepping on the original series, and Trekkies don't like it. So, and they're worried that they're gonna put. So the current rumor is, according to this guy, is that they're thinking they'll do 3 seasons. They'll end the Pike story, and that'll end it nicely. So they will not then be stepping into the original series. So they will not mess.
So they want to keep it separate, and not too. Oh, that's a quite interesting perspective.
Because can I just say, you say I don't understand all this because, like, as a business point of view, the Picard series has done extremely well. Is it not the most popular thing on the Paramount streaming network now? I mean, it started off a bit and then it exploded, didn't it? So surely, as a business point of view, you're going to get Star Trek Legacy before Academy, and a Michelle Yeoh Section 30.
It's probably Kurtzman. It's probably Kurtzman wants the Academy.
It don't make sense, surely. If you've had a hit and don't you build on it? So,
but you got to realise, up to like episode 5 of Picard season 3, it wasn't a hit.
Okay.
It wasn't even getting into Paramount Plus's top 10. It was like 11,
Really?
12 every week. It was around episode 5 that it just went boof and went and really found the audience, and that's when they sort of realised they had a hit. And by the end of the season, it wasn't just appearing on Paramount's top 10; it was appearing on the streaming services top 10. So I mean,
at the moment, the latest,
never done.
So the latest information is it's still doing really, really well with the last episodes. Is that what you?
Yeah. But it's actually appearing on the top 10 for all streaming services, which no Star Trek series before that has done.
Oh well, if that's the case, then they're bound to do something more with it. If it's that successful.
They have to now. I mean,
so.
When not if. Yeah, it's 100% when not if.
Right, let me just turn off my phone. Sorry.
No worries.
It's got the IT cloud. Let me just turn this off.
Oh, at least there isn't that alarm going off.
No. Oh yeah, that went off yesterday.
Oh, that jumped out of my chair yesterday.
And I need you.
They had an heart attack.
Oh no. Well, look, we're going to actually quickly pause for a second because we've got the Zoom limitations. But after that, I just want to sort of quickly break down specifically your favourite episodes, surprises and stuff like that. So, guys, we'll be back in just 2 minutes. We'll be right back. Thank you. Right, sorry about that. We're back now. Obviously, we're still continuing with the end of Picard Season 3. We've certainly enjoyed it. So, I guess we've talked about some of the faults with the show. Let's talk about some of the highlights. So, guest Jay, what are some of the moments where you thought, yeah, this is really good? What was your favourite bits?
To be honest, it started off from the very first episode. I liked that they set up the story and it was cleverly done. But to be honest, when it got really good was the first time we saw Captain Shaw.
Yes.
For me, Todd Stashwick.
Yeah, Stashwick. Yeah.
Completely stole the series. That scene when they're asking, "Okay, well, we're gonna do this," and he just goes, "No."
It's funny when he came along in that opening scene. He practically stole the whole series. I mean, he didn't, but he was a very important part of it. And I think that he was one of the best characters, especially in Starfleet, that we've seen for a long, long time.
An actual character with flaws as well.
Yes, yeah. Which was explained as it went on as well.
Oh, and beautifully explained.
So clever. Everything about the way he hated the Picard because he was at War 359. He was an engineer on some ship. He was a survivor. I'd never thought it would go that way. I was very surprised.
Fantastic seeing that in the bar. They all look that way. When you finally found out why he was like he was.
Yes.
Awesome.
Exactly. Yeah, brilliant.
The acting, he's got some acting chops, that boy. Yeah. And the other reason why I love Todd as well is because he is a massive geek. He's a big geek.
I know. I just watched one interview with him today, and he's got a house full of comics and like where we've had before, where you have like posters and sci-fi posters and little figures. He's got
It sells D&D stuff and his own merch and things, and but it sells loads. But but he's been. I've loved him since I saw him in was it like Burn Notice about 15 years ago, and shows
this is
like
the first time I've ever seen him. I know he's an Enterprise, but I mean the first time I've actually seen him proper is this, and I thought he was such a strong character, such a good actor. So
and it's one of those likable actors as well. You did like him and everything, but he completely stole that whole scene, and it went from there. I loved obviously everything with the strike, like we said earlier. Vadik is just such a good bad guy.
And Christopher Plummer's daughter as well, which is really cool, especially after Star Trek 6. And there were some parallels with Star Trek 6. I know it's like not important, but like the sound of the view screen coming on was the same in Star Trek 6 as it was with Vadik's character. There's some lovely ties in with the original series.
Remember how much? Sorry, do you remember how much there was a lot of stuff talked about the computer voice?
Majel Barrett.
They weren't using Majel Barrett for the computer voice, and it was the first time in a Star Trek that it hasn't been Majel Barrett. And then we're on the D.
And they brought the voice back. I know, that was so clever. And I mean, I recognise that when they featured her, that was actually from the Chain of Command Part 2, where Picard gets the captain back from Jellicoe. But I know that she gave her consent to use her voice after she'd passed away, and I think that she even recorded some dialogue. I don't know whether they used any of the dialogue which hasn't appeared in a previous show. I love that.
I think her voice was synthesized, to be fair, this time.
Because, I thought, okay. I thought it was recorded.
They do it nowadays, isn't it? But so it's based on her voice. They put her voice in a computer.
Like they did with Darth Vader on Obi-Wan. Okay.
I believe that's how they did it. But I just love that because, again, it was subtle. They didn't make a big fanfare out of it. They just did it.
Oh, it's lovely.
I like how they announced Jack as Picard's son, because they did exactly the same. We knew it was coming. As soon as we saw him in an English accent, we were like...
Okay. But the way it was addressed with Crusher staring at Picard on the bridge, and oh my gosh, that was a powerful moment. I thought that was pretty
It worked. But I like that because they didn't drag it through. I think Picard season 1 and 2, that would have been 3 or 4 bloody episodes.
Yes.
They didn't. They did it. They weren't right. I know everyone then went, "Why has he got an English accent?" And I'm like,
he went to school in London or something, apparently.
Yeah, that's what. And the accent just stuck. And I'm like, Terence Ellis actually did see some of the problems he was writing into this, and dealt with them quite quickly.
Yes, he actually answered his own. He actually saw problems which people would address, and he tried his best to answer those queries, and there's contradictions and stuff like that. What do you think about Ro Laren coming back? Not Michelle Forbes, not that bothered. I mean, I liked her in Battlestar.
I wasn't that bothered. I thought her part was great because, again, that was such a complicated character, and they dragged that into the series. So she wasn't just there to make up numbers. There was a 3-dimensional character there and a reason, and it was actually quite emotional when she then, took out the way she then.
To stop the ship. That was quite good.
That was because her loyalty was always questioned. That was a big part of her character.
Yeah,
where was her loyalty, and she showed you exactly where it was in the end. And I thought that was very cleverly and very beautifully done.
I think like with Picard, the thing I liked about that with Picard, in Next Gen, there were certain people who put a bit of inspiration. You get them to, how do you say, become a better person. But it was a bit hard with her, and she did sort of like say, you wanted me to be something I couldn't do.
Yeah.
And she were in conflicts with that because she didn't want to betray him because he did give her a chance, but also he did expect too much out of her as well. And that what is because this said I've noticed there's been flaws with Picard's character now, like the scene with Shaw in the bar where he's inspiring everybody in the nebula from the strike, and then Shaw comes in and just stinks him, saying I was an engineer at Wolf 359 while we saw with you.
Yeah.
And I just thought that because he's quite an inspirational character, isn't he? He's a leader, isn't he? But in this, I found that you were getting flaws with Picard, and he will realising this himself as well because of his age. Like, maybe I was a bit too much like that back then,
I was also impressed with Jerry Ryan coming back as 7 of 9. We have seen in the previous seasons, and it didn't quite work. But I just thought, that the character and the actress, who I've always liked, really shone this season. I thought it was a bit of a tough thing to follow, where she was now the commander of the Titan, whereas the last time she was in the Fenric Rangers in the previous seasons. I thought it was a bit of a jump up. How did you feel about her being
Yeah,
that's what I'm wondering. Were you okay with it?
Starfleet's accelerated program.
Yeah.
Don't really care. When they can cross the Federation in 2 or 3 minutes, instead of and they completely forget warp speeds and how big the Federation is. I really don't care that Jerry Ryan got a promotion quick. And I'm sorry, if you look like Jerry Ryan, you can have whatever rank you want.
I totally agree. I'm not. Yeah, resistance is futile.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I would let her do whatever she wanted. It's absolutely fine. But I tell you what, just to remember things. I know we're talking about the positives now, but the worst bit of Star Trek of this series was the space nebula. that was stupid. Where the nebula goes, and then it all turns into space babies, little things, and I'm like, I'm sorry.
That's trying to be the exploration of Star Trek. That's what they were trying to do in that scene.
Wasn't that like a reminder to the pilot episode? That's what I thought when I saw the.
Yeah, they did the far point.
With the two aliens that they're holding hands in space.
There was a parallel, but
tentacles. Sorry.
I'm just going to say it is supposed to be science fiction, and do you really think that science would never have noticed a nebula popping and turning into billions of space babies? I mean, it's just like I think we'd have noticed that at some point.
Voyager also flew into a living nebula at least once. And it actually cut a hole, and they had to go back and repair it because it was like they wounded this creature in space. We have seen that before. We have seen space creatures
nicked it,
before.
didn't they? And
Yeah.
Some of them got on board.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, I just thought that was
cheesy or
it just silly. Okay. It just went a bit too far for me. But I mean, Riker did that as like that was his joy of like just rediscovering that he's an explorer. And just that like snapped Riker back into reality sort of thing. But I just thought it was a low for me. I just thought it was a little silly. And they just went a little bit too far with it. And it looked stupid. It just looked stupid. But I thought they were going to go something with the changelings soon for that, because they kept saying that there's this biometric energy. And then it was almost organic. So I was thinking, there's going to be something to do. There's something in the core that's pulling the ship down, and it's going to be something to do with the changelings. And they're like, oh no, it's just a big space squid nursery.
Yeah.
But
well, in the end, I mean, there's always something which doesn't quite work. I mean, but I'm trying to think what else to ask about. I mean, so did you think every regular Next Generation character was well represented in this series? I personally think they were. I think they all had a moment to shine in the actual season.
Shelby didn't last long, did she?
I didn't recognise her. I did not recognise her.
No, I did at first, and then when they said it's Admiral Shelby, and then she were dead. I thought, well, I'm not coming back to Star Trek if I were in it 30 years ago.
Well, no, she was in possibly the best two-parter of the Next Generation. But I was so annoyed. She was the captain of the Enterprise F. I kept saying it was going to be Captain Harry Kim.
Do you remember that scene in Best of Both Worlds where she's in live with Riker and she says, "You're in the way"? Do you remember that scene?
Yeah,
exactly.
She wanted to be number one.
Yeah.
To be Enterprise, and he was supposed to be off to captain the Melbourne, wasn't he?
Yes.
That's it. Yeah. So that was interesting. But I think that most of the characters. I mean, Geordie, we saw his family, which I thought was quite a nice thing, especially that LeVar Burton's real life daughter was involved as I think that was the one on the engineering daughter, wasn't it? Because Sydney was the one on the bridge. I can't remember but I know. But they were both actually named in All Good Things in the alternate timeline, which I thought was a lovely time with the last episode again.
That's lovely.
Worf was great. I'm a pacifist, but he wasn't. He chopped a Ferengi's head off within about 10 minutes, which I thought was good.
I remember in the show him saying that. I remember it in the advert. Did he actually say it in the show?
Well, I'm a pacifist. Yeah, I think he did. Yeah, he did. Yeah,
said it a few times. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to watch it again.
And then Riker says we're all going to die. No, it was good. Look, what do you think of the humour? The humour was good.
Dream.
Go on.
I'll tell you something really random. I dreamt, and this is how much I enjoyed Star Trek this time around, that I apparently started dreaming about it.
Okay.
But I dreamt that Chakotay was in an episode. Because there's a rumour that he was supposed to be in an episode.
Yes, I heard that.
I dreamt that he was in an episode talking to Raffi and Worf. I then said that on a video, and everybody went, "No, he wasn't." And I'm like, "He was." I remember it.
You actually thought that actually really happened. Oh, that's bad. That must have been one vivid dream. Although he was, Robert Beltran was supposed to be in season 2 as the husband of Seven of Nine's character in the Confederation. Apparently, but Robert Beltran said no because he didn't like the idea of his character acting like that, which is why. So he was offered. He could have been back, but he didn't.
Never really liked being in Star Trek, though.
He hated it. He really didn't like it.
Yeah,
he really didn't like it, and he actually
put his voice to Prodigy. He was happy to get a payday and do Prodigy, but he obviously didn't want to put the tight uniform back on.
He never liked being in Star Trek, I don't think. He was just there for the money.
He used to badmouth the series. He used to come out with things in magazine. I was at a convention. He was saying stuff there years ago.
Yeah.
I think he thought it was beneath it or something.
I mean, I still
that's-
remember
that's-
from. I saw him in Night of the Comet, which is this cheesy 80s sci-fi series, movie rather, and we've actually reviewed it, Night of the Comet, and I thought he was all right in that, but I've not seen him in many other things. Actually, I mean, I mainly know him for Voyager.
He was in the Street Hawk pilot, but he died in the
Was
first.
he?
Street Hawk.
Yeah.
Oh God, that's a
He's the
series
mate
I've not heard about for a long time.
The character. That the main characters, it's his mate, his partner gets killed in the first 2-3 minutes, and I was just like, that's okay.
Yeah.
Cherokee's dead. Cherokee.
Yeah.
Chakotay's
Cherokee.
dead.
Well, look, I think that I don't know what else we actually have to say about the series. Really, I think that I suppose what we often do.
For me,
Go on, Martin.
I got the best character. The impacts I got out of all this was seeing Worf. When he made his appearance, I think, was it in the second or third episode? And the data thing, I wasn't bothered about. It was interesting. I mean, they really had us all fooled with the trailers, didn't they? With the Moriarty.
Moriarty was there for about 2 minutes.
And to me, it was just like a security system, and then we got Law. There was that argument between him and Data. I mean, it was all right. I mean, really, is all this needed? Really, it was all. Do you know what I mean? They advertised it that Law was going to be one of the big villains, and he won.
Yeah, but I like the fact.
that
I mean, I think one of the strengths of it was that Data really became as close to being human as he ever wanted to be in the first episode.
Yeah, he did. He evolved. Didn't he?
And they
He
killed.
did
Technically,
evolve,
they did
yeah.
technically kill off Law. They even mentioned Lal, Data's real first daughter, and B4. So it tied in again. This was done by a fan who knew all the ideas, all the stories from the movies, The Next Generation, Voyager, DS9. They even brought back the Changelings and all that sort of stuff. And I think that's partly why it worked for me.
I have to ask Jay a question. What did you think when you saw Captain James Tiberius Kirk's body in a cryotube? I had to ask.
So, I mean, I know what it's referencing. Obviously, it's referencing the Phoenix Project stories that William Shatner wrote.
Yes.
So and everyone's going crazy, going, "Oh, Bill Shatner's going to be back.
Yeah.
He'll be back." And I'm like, I'm not sure he will be, even though he could. He's in his 90s. He still looks exactly the same.
He was supposed to come back in
Yeah,
Enterprise.
he
They
does,
wanted
yeah.
him back in Enterprise, and they didn't offer him enough money.
It was a very interesting story. That what they wanted to do. Apparently, the Tantalus field it didn't disintegrate. It sent you somewhere in the past, in another dimension,
mirror universe.
and he ends up. That's how Spock gets rid of it. He ends up in our universe on this like weird planet, and that's how Archer meets him. That's what they were going to do.
I
but
heard
they
something
wanted so
about
much
that.
money,
It was. Yeah,
That would have been awesome in season 5.
It would. Yeah.
Right.
But I don't think everyone obviously went nuts thinking that that's going to be a big thing. I don't think. I think it was just a nod to William Shatner, but also I think it's trying to help explain why Picard was there as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a bit of a nod to his books,
Which is fair enough, I suppose.
Yeah.
But
I read them. The Return. I remember that.
there's
I
loads of
never read
videos
it.
on YouTube. William Shatner's coming back to Star Trek, and I'm just like, I didn't go there. I didn't pull that trigger. I'm like, I'm not doing a video on that. That's not happening.
I don't think he's going to come back now.
I read it was bad. I read it about 25 years ago. I bought this big, massive hardback, and I thought, excellent, and I read it. And I thought, are you kidding me?
I read a few of his books. That were great.
Yeah, terrible. Tech Wars as well. Let's not go there.
Oh,
with
Tech
us.
Wars. We've all heard about Tech Wars. No, that was even referenced to Father
Right.
Ted, of all things. Now, listen, what we normally do, Joe, is we normally finish with giving the show a rating. But before we do that, an old friend of mine from school who stays in touch, Malcolm Patterson, he actually sent me a big sort of text about some of the actual aspects of the show he liked. I wanted to read some of it. He did like it. He said, let's see, what did he say about it? He says, the three key twist reveals were no no such thing as everyone knew that Jack was Picard as soon as he was identified as Beverly's son. The changing reveal wasn't the gut punch the writers thought it was, and the Borg reveal was predicted by everybody as soon as Jack started hearing voices. So again, that goes back to partly what we were saying, Jay, when we were doing on your show. Also, it says Riker having to explain the new Neo Constitution to Picard was confusing. Was it Riker's old ship? We've already talked about this. Refitted, or in which case Picard would know what class it was, or was it a new ship, which makes Shaw's comments about the Riker's chair dumb. We've seen ships turn in seconds and go into emergency warp immediately, but as the script requires it and the writers weren't that good at actual story building, we get no explanation as to why it now takes a starship 3.5 weeks to turn, evade and go into warp. The change in cutting off her hand to communicate with the Borg. Queen, what the fuck was that nonsense? That was a bit weird. Riker suddenly being a coward made little sense. I don't know, when was he a coward? Was he a coward at one point? I can't remember that bit.
He lost his son,
That was to do with
didn't
his
he?
family and his kids.
Oh, you mean back in season? Okay,
Yeah.
all right. And he had been through a lot. And he had he thought that was a bit silly, and he said Raffi attacked by changelings with a sword. A sword? How does that work? Why did the changelings respond in kind and not just shoot her? So he liked it, but he has. I won't say too much because he's got a lot about it. But I wanted to mention him in the show. But he saw some issues in the show, which he said he's got some minor gripes. But he also says that if you take out all the nostalgic moments out, you see very quickly how bad the writers were. I think the writers were bad. I think, like everything, writing. They get different sort of qualities for writing. I personally think that the writing wasn't fantastic, but for me, it held up.
Do you think nostalgia carried this series?
I think it helped it. I think it was. I think it was.
If there were no nostalgia in this, but we got this story, do you think it would have worked?
I don't know. What do you think, Jay?
I think it would have done, but the problem is you can't have the story without the nostalgia because
That's true.
Because that's right. The story is that's a good point. Otherwise, it would work. Yeah, that makes sense.
You could have done it with different characters. If it had been completely different characters and Picard wasn't there and everything, you could have done the story the same, really, and it wouldn't have mattered. You didn't really need Worf or Riker or anyone else. You needed Picard though because of the whole.
Yeah,
that was a big core of the story, wasn't it? But yeah, I mean, I think it's underlined though for executives that this sort of thing can work.
Right.
But I would agree that the writing in places was not great. Some of the where they were talking and things were not great, and there was silly mistakes over and over again. It's just silly things like how she's looking for the changeling pot.
The one that Odo used to have,
yeah.
Weird.
So they used the one from Odo's from When Deep Space Nine.
Yes.
But that was actually one that he was given. So it was it's not Maquis. What is the species called? The planet?
Bajorans.
Bajorans. It's a Bajoran pot.
Yeah.
Why were the changelings using a Bajoran pot for one? But then a silly little thing was you could see the two lights in the back behind Seven when she's looking for it, and you can see there's nothing there. And then she goes to the other light, and all of a sudden there's a big ass shadow where the pot is.
Oh, I never noticed that.
It's just like, oh,
yeah.
But a lot of them they weren't regenerated because they've been modified. They didn't need to turn into a kebab for after. I mean, they did look a bit pukey, didn't they? When they slimed along the floor. I prefer the 90s.
They slimed inside of the pot, and I'm like. So why aren't they just leaving slime? It's not like bloody Slimer from Ghostbusters leaving ectoplasm everywhere. Since when do they start leaving residue behind?
Do you think they should have had them looking a lot more like the DS9 version? The sort of like was like a lager, didn't they? In a sort of like in a cup or something. That sort of more of a liquidy form, rather than this sort of messy, moving meat kind of aspect about it. It's a bit strange, isn't it?
Did you see when they changed? And smoke would come off them when they changed.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
I didn't notice that.
You saw that a few times, like a vapor would come off them.
I never noticed that.
I quite like that because it was almost like there's a chemical reaction going on. So I quite like that, but we've not seen it before. But they are different because they've got all semi-solid organs, so we don't know what that requires. But I might quite like that. So it's not they were generating heat almost, weren't they, when they made the change?
Oh, sort of like reaction in the atmosphere because like heat is giving off steam or something. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, because you couldn't scan for them. They had to modify the scanners to, in the end, didn't they? They caught them through the transporter system.
I thought that was clever. There was a lot of little bits of clever in this. Like you said earlier, the Borg bit, how they got assimilated. I didn't get it first time. I had to watch it.
I found it a bit confusing. I had to watch it twice to work it out myself.
Yeah, but then when I watched it the second time, I was like, oh, bloody hell, that's clever.
Yes.
I mean, really, after like Endgame with Voyager, I mean, when the Future Janeway, when Starfleet again did commit genocide in a way, didn't it? Really, because even though they used that virus, which was from the future, on the Borg, I mean, the devastation on all the worlds in the Delta, it must have been what happened to the complete destruction of the entire collective.
But as we said before, I didn't think it was as bad as that. I didn't think it was as serious as that. Voyager didn't make it as clear as that it was that dangerous or that destructive until now.
A couple of times, didn't it, in other things that we didn't know how bad it was.
That's what I'm saying.
But that also then goes back into season 2, where we see the Borg. And we see that queen. It's from an alternative future, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's
There's
right.
the Borg queen that's been captured by the Federation. All of a sudden, that makes sense. But let's not get into the whole Jurati Borg thing.
No. I said this last week about, but if she took the ship in the past and went to the Delta Quadrant, then what about this? But I know you're right. I'm not going there.
Well, let's look to wrap this up. So normally we end. Let's ask you guys, what would you rate Picard season 3 out of 10? So let's ask you first, Martin. What would you rate it out of 10?
I'm going to be really generous because, like, every week I've really enjoyed watching it. I know there's been flaws and the nostalgia, but like I said earlier, it's like having old friends round for dinner.
Okay.
I'm gonna give it a 10. I've had such an experience watching this, and this has fully restored my faith back in Star Trek.
All right, there, Jay. What would you ask you? What's your rating out of 10?
I can't be that generous. This show, for me, it's got to be perfect to get a 10. And there are perfect TV shows, perfect movies out there, but they're really rare. But I tell you what, I would give it 8 out of 10.
Okay.
And I would give it a 9 if there weren't so many silly mistakes.
Fair enough.
And the entire Federation is completely undefended for like 6 months in this series, the way they've done it. So
That's another. I mean, that can't have been the old fleet. I mean, that was.
No, it wasn't. Yeah, it must be. Yeah, it can't be done.
You don't put all
but
your
it did suggest it was, though.
thousands of
It did
ships.
suggest it
No,
was.
they said straight, it's the entire.
Yeah, they did say that. Yeah, they did say
I'm
that.
giving it a 10 because it was nostalgic for me. That is the reason for me.
I think an 8 is just an 8 for me.
I know, I agree. Yeah.
8 or not 8.5. I'm going to give it 8.5.
I'm going to give it a 9.
That's
I'm going to give it a 9.5. I think that it almost there. It was very close to the top, and I have been blown away watching this series. I'm really grateful that it's made. I've got faith now that we can get long-term, good quality Star Trek back, and I never thought we'd be getting this. So I think it deserves a 9.5. I really should give it a 10, but I'll give it 9.5 because I want more. I know it's not that show's fault, but it's not certain how it's going to go. So, okay, guys, I think that's pretty much it for this show. Jay, thank you so much for coming on. We've really appreciated having you back.
Yeah.
Please come back again soon. I'm sure we could review something which, when Strange New Worlds comes along, you're welcome to join us for that. And like I said, I'd love to do some more stuff with you on your channel if I get a chance in the future.
Always an opportunity. But as Captain Shaw says, no.
Is that me coming back to your channel? Is that what you're saying?
Both. Yeah, not no. Can't wait. Invite me anytime. If
absolutely.
I'm
Thank you. I appreciate it. And Martin, thank you very much, guys. Both of you. So we'll be back next week. Next week I can't talk. Reviewing The Mandalorian season 3. That should be interesting.
That's also shit.
Well, that's it. Is that
terrible.
your review? That's.
It's terrible.
You don't want to come back for that one, then, do you, Jay?
That's not bad.
It was bad.
But I will say it seemed worse because Picard was so much better. I think if it had been separated, we watched it after Picard. I don't know.
No, I don't. Even if it started this week and 10 weeks from now, the three of us were here.
Yeah.
I think we'd come to the same conclusion. I'm not going to swear.
We're going to save it to next week, but it
terrible.
was not quite as good. So, anyway, guys, thank you very much.
Yeah,
We'll be
a lot
back
of
next time on the Solar One Sci-Fi podcast. Live long and prosper. Thank you very much.
Live long and prosper.